Democrats versus Republicans, liberals versus conservatives, progressives versus reformists. Whatever you call them, they're two sides to any political debate. Hi, I'm Rebecca Brayton, and welcome to WatchMojo.com. And today we're speaking with spin doctor to the left, Warren Kinsella, about the differences between the left and the right.
If we're not training engineers to make sure that they are equipped here in this country, then companies won't come here. Those investments are what's going to help to make sure that we continue to lead this world economy, not just next year, but 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Government does not
Romney.
create jobs. Government does not
Governor
create
Romney.
jobs.
Guys like me believe that government can be a force for good, and that we have an obligation to help people who are weaker and are poor and sick, and the government can and should help. Conservatives have an antipathy towards that. They hate that. Some of them regard it as evil, and they say, well, you should take care of yourself.
True competition in the delivery of medical care is what is needed, not more government meddling.
The other thing I think would be empathy. Conservatives often misconstrue that to mean sympathy, and it's not the same thing. Empathy, as the president said in 2008, is putting yourself in the shoes of somebody else.
If we see a child who's languishing in an inner city school, how would we feel if that was our child?
Conservatives regard that too often as weakness, and they're not particularly interested in doing that and demonstrating empathy. And I think that's one way of clearly distinguishing between the two. To be critical on my side, I think we overthink things. So instead of saying, here are my 5 priorities, we present this laundry list of stuff that it gets lost in the detail.
And we need a fresh start, a new credibility, a president who can bring allies to our side. I also have a plan to win the war on terror, funding homeland security, strengthening our military, cutting off finances, reaching out to the world, again, building strong alliances.
When you're hunting bear, don't get distracted by rabbit tracks. And progressives always do. We always get pulled into detail and minutiae, and conservatives don't. They stick to these very broad principles, and that appeals to people because people can understand that they don't have to spend 6 hours, digesting your platform.
We have not made the progress we need to make to put people back to work. That's why I put out a 5-point plan that gets America 12 million new jobs.
Values is the most important thing of all, and it's so hard to define. It's the stuff of life, like I was saying. It's hopes and dreams and aspirations. It's also fear and resentments. And, they're important because the political brain is an emotional organ. And logic, if it plays a role, is a supporting role. Conservatives understood this first and best. And that's why when you see them speaking politically about practically any issue, it's always couched in the language of emotion. And they're very, very good at capturing people at the level of their hearts.
Instead of drifting along toward tragedy, we will set a course toward safety. Before the day of horror can come, before it is too late to act, this danger will be removed.
Whereas, progressives have this tendency to just drive their message to people's heads, reason over passion, as Trudeau said. And that's good, but you shouldn't do it to the exclusion of the emotional side of it.
Ann yesterday was at a rally in Denver, and a woman came up to her with a baby in her arms and said, Ann, my husband has had 4 jobs in 3 years, part-time jobs. He's lost his most recent job, and we've now just lost our home. Can you help us? And the answer is yes, we can help, but it's going to take a different path.
Words are great tools that can assist you, and they're things that we can use against you. And if you look at the way in which conservatives communicate, the language they use, the words they use, is the language of your everyday person. And so they make themselves understandable. They spend a lot of time trying to make themselves understandable.
Go to a kid's soccer game on Saturday and turn to any parent there on the sideline and ask them, how are you feeling about the economy? And I'll bet you're going to hear some fear in that parent's voice.
Liberals need to take a look at that and remain honest, but also communicate, use words in a way that it reaches people and not repels people.
Think about what the governor just said. He said, when I took office, the price of gasoline was $1.80, $1.86. Why is that? Because the economy was on the verge of collapse. Because we were about to go through the worst recession since the Great Depression.
The global recession took place in early 2009, and things got really bad for a lot of people really fast. And so the right side of the spectrum reacted and the left side of the spectrum reacted. And it was interesting because the Occupy kids who were in the parks and the Tea Party people who were protesting, they actually represented, there was about 23% of Americans that supported either side of the argument. But what was interesting was how the Tea Party people drifted off into the Republican Party and became part of the mainstream of the Republican Party, to the point that, Michelle Bachmann, Ron Paul, Rick Perry, they ran for president of the United States. They were all Tea Party people.
We need is a fearless conservative to defeat Barack Obama's failed socialist policies.
Whereas the Occupy kids, you can't cite a single example of an Occupy leader who got absorbed by the Democratic Party of the United States. That, to me, it represents a failure of our side. Those kids had the most important progressive message of the age, which is the 1% versus the 99%, the haves versus the have-nots. And the conservatives represent the 1%. That's their interest. That's who they are. And it's low-hanging fruit for us to communicate that message, and we didn't do it. And we didn't bring the Occupy kids into our tent. And that, again, is one of the reasons why we lose.